فأكثروا فيها الفساد فصب عليهم ربك صوت عذاب إن ربك لبالمرصاد فأما الإنسان إذا ما ابتلاه ربه فأكرمه ونعمه فيقول ربي أكرمن وأما إذا ما ابتلاه فقدر عليه رزقه فيقول ربي أهانن كلا بل لا تكرمون اليتيم ولا تحضون على طعام المسكين وتأكلون التراث أكلا لما وتحبون المال حبا جما كلا إذا دكت الأرض دكا دكا وجاء ربك والملك صفا صفا وجيء يومئذ جهنم يومئذ يتذكر الإنسان وأنى له الذكرى يقول يا ليتني قدمت لحياة فيومئذ لا يعذب عذابه أحد ولا يوثق وثاقه أحد يا أيته النفس المطمئنة أرجئي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخل في عبادي وادخلي جناتي صلوات محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। शाबान की इस मुक़द्दस रात की आप सब लोगों को मुबारक हो। एक मिलादी सलवात आवाज़ बुलंद से पारे दीगर बाबा से बुलंद दरूद भेजें। चार मिसरे आपकी समातों की नज़र तारिक भाई, इलियास भाई, अब्बास भाई और इमरान भाई आपके लिए। जिक्र सज्जाद ही सजदे का मजा देता है, जिक्र सज्जाद ही सजदे का मजा देता है, آدمیت کو ولایت کا پتہ دیتا ہے، ذکر سجاد ہی سجدے کا پتہ، ذکر سجاد ہی سجدے کا مزہ دیتا ہے، اور آدمیت کو ولایت کا پتہ دیتا ہے۔ آدم آل محمد کی کریمی کو سلام، آدم آل محمد کی کریمی کو سلام۔ اور سنیے کیسا بیمار ہے دنیا کو شفا دیتا ہے، کیسا بیمار ہے دنیا کو شفا دیتا ہے۔ آدم آل محمد کی کریمی کو سلام، کیسا بیمار ہے دنیا کو شفا دیتا ہے۔ صلوات بھیجیں۔ سید سجاد، سید سجاد، یہ ریحان اعظمی کا کلام ہے، اور میں تو لکھ نہیں سکتا تھا، میری وائف نے لکھ کے مجھے دیا ہے۔ ابھی تک میرے ہاتھوں میں قلم پکڑنے کی طاقت نہیں ہے، تو اس کے لیے بھی صلوات بھیج دیں۔ سید سجاد، سید سجاد، کتاب عزم و شجاعت ہے سید سجاد، کتاب عزم و خدائے صبر کی آیت ہے سید سجاد، کتاب عزم و شجاعت ہے سید سجاد، وہ جس کے سجدوں کو سجدہ نماز کرتی ہے، وہ جس کے سجدوں کو سجدہ نماز کرتی ہے، وقار شان عبادت ہے سید سجاد، وقار شان عبادت ہے سید سجاد، کتاب عزم و شجاعت ہے سید سجاد، سید سجاد، نحیف کاندھوں پہ کربو بلا سے شام تلک، نحیف کاندھوں پہ کربو بلا سے شام تلک، اٹھائے بار امامت ہے سید سجاد، اٹھائے بار امامت ہے سید سجاد، سید سجاد، کتاب عزم و شجاعت ہے سید سجاد، بہار یہ ابو طالب کے گھر میں چوتھی ہے، بہار یہ ابو طالب کے گھر میں چوتھی ہے، نبی کے دین کی علامت ہے سید سجاد، نبی کے دین کی علامت ہے سید سجاد، سید سجاد، پس حسین جو اسلام کا محافظ تھا، پس حسین جو اسلام کا محافظ تھا، حسین کی وہ ریاضت ہے سید سجاد، حسین کی وہ ریاضت ہے سید سجاد، سید سجاد سید سجاد بچیں گے حشر میں کس طرح قاتلان حسین بچیں گے حشر میں کس طرح قاتلان حسین گواہ روز قیامت ہے سید سجاد گواہ روز قیامت ہے سید سجاد سید سجاد یہ توق بیڑی پہننا تو مرضی رب ہے یہ توق بیڑی پہننا تو مرضی رب ہے علی کی ورنہ شجاعت ہے سید سجاد علی کی ورنہ شجاعت ہے سید سجاد سید سجاد حسن حسین کی جسمانے تربیت کی تھی حسن حسین کی جسمانے تربیت کی تھی اسی کے علم کی محنت ہے سید سجاد اسی کے علم کی محنت ہے سید سجاد سید سجاد کتاب عزم و شجاعت ہے سید سجاد خدائے صبر کی آیت ہے سید سجاد سید سجاد درود بھیجو محمد تھینک یو
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد
No, it's fine.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين صلوات please ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب صلوات please اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum, my dear brothers, sisters and elders, inshallah. Khushali Mubarak to all of you. And mashallah, as Kawarbai said that his wife assisted him in writing the poetry, yes? Mashallah. So it reminded me of Lady Khadija assisting Rasulullah. So inshallah, although we are of course celebrating the men, so we give also salawat to the women, and especially to Lady Zaynab, salamullahi alayha, that without her, the morale of the camp of Karbala would not be there. Zayn al-Abidin al-Islam would not have been looked after. And in fact, we have to say that the message of Islam would arguably not have continued after if it was not for her courage. So even when we think of the men, and mashallah, Kawarbai is reciting, the dear wife, my dear wife, they are there as support and as bearers, inshallah, of these messages. Salawat. Alhamdulillah. So this should get me some brownie points. And for all of you, I've done it on behalf of all men. So please, women, whatever they have done, please, mashallah, maaf karo, please, inshallah. Salawat, please. Allahumma salli ala. Inshallah. So I left you on a bit of a cliffhanger yesterday, which was that we were discussing the mind of Al-Husayn ibn Ali alayhi salam, and we concluded fundamentally that the Imam is someone that has to act by the book, Amil bil kitab wa akhid bil qist. Yes, that he is the one that is enforcing or taking upon himself to enforce justice and fairness in society. And I said that this word of qist, which he uses, and he uses it a few times on the way to Karbala, is the word of the Quran. And before I continue the sermon of Imam alayhi salam, just to delve deeper, what does the Quran say about adala and qist? I defined it. I said that adala ya'adilu, to act justly, equitably, fairly. Qassata yuqassitu, which means, again, same meaning, but also to distribute fairly and equally. So these words are used when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is instructing both humankind and believers equally together. Okay? Let me just give you two examples, right? So, in the Quran, you may have heard this particular verse. This is addressed to the believers. This is in Surah Al-Ma'idah verse 8. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ya ayyuhalladina amanu kunu qawwamina lillahi shuhada'i bil qist. See the same word. Wala yajrimannakum shananu qawmin ala alla ta'adilu. I'dilu huwa aqrabu littaqwa wattaqullah inna allaha khabirun bima ta'amalun. Allah says, O you who have faith, which hopefully is us, inshallah, be maintainers as witnesses for the sake of Allah of justice. Okay? Maintain justice for the sake of Allah. And ill feeling for a people should never lead you to be unfair. Means just because you don't like someone doesn't mean you are unfair to them. It's amazing. One of the definitions I gave yesterday was, if you are just, your objective in your thinking and in your actions. Be fair. That is nearer to God-wariness. And be wary of Allah. Allah is indeed well aware of what you do. So the Quran is giving a philosophy of justice. Justice means actually removing your bias, your suspicion, your ill feeling for a people, whoever they are, and being fair to them. So when you and I may complain about the way Muslims are reported in the news, yes, we are fair to say that just because there are sections of the media that don't like Muslims or may not like Palestinians, they report unfairly. But then at the same time, we also have to be fair on ourselves. That we as Muslim countries, we as Muslim communities, we should be fair as to how to you and I act. And not only that, even our ill feeling of, even if we don't like certain people or parts of the culture, still we must say, how can I act fairly towards them? Put it this way, the Quranic message is very universal. That's why I posed the question yesterday, that you think to yourself, Al-Husayn ibn Ali alayhi salam, trusting other people, setting aside whatever his views about Christianity, whatever his views about anything in society, when it came to the core principles of Islam or Allah and justice, he said, you are welcome to maintain justice because this is the instruction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, in another verse, Allah does not address the faithful. He says in Surah number 57, Surah Al-Hadid, verse 25, he says, for example, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, لَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا رُسُلَنَا بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ وَأَنزَلْنَا مَعَهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْمِيزَانَ لِيَقَوْمَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ. Certainly we sent our prophets with bayyinat, evidences or proofs, and we sent down with them the book and the balance so that mankind may maintain justice. One of the things, by the way, which is unique to Shia Muslims, I don't know if you and I always remember this, but this is what we are taught in madrasa, but I don't know if we are taught in this way. Whenever children are taught usul ad-din or Shia usul ad-din, we say tawheed and then adala, yes? When we teach children and ourselves, I only briefly mentioned this yesterday, I couldn't develop the point. We say that God is just. But does any one of you know why we say that, by the way? Feel free to give your answers. Why do, like, if you say Tawheed, Nabuwa and Qiyamah, you are a Muslim. Yes? You are a Muslim. Why do Shias emphasize Adala and Imama? I mean, Imama is, I think, a more obvious, you can't give an answer there, but it's a more obvious answer. But why Adala? Because if you say Tawheed, if you say one God, it includes all of the attributes. So why do we say Adala? Anybody know? Or hazard a guess?
Adala, everything. If there's no Adala, everything falls away.
Mashallah, could you expand on that a bit? So, sorry, Kawarbai said that if you don't have Adala, everything falls away. Could you expand on that, mashallah?
You know, you believe in God, you believe in Nabuwat, you believe in Imamat, will go out of the way if you don't believe in other.
So, do you mean to say that if you don't believe in a just God, if you don't believe in a just God, then the rest of the system collapses because maybe we can't trust God? Is this correct? Yes? Okay. Mashallah, that is one side of the coin. That is correct, right? We believe God is just in the sense that God cannot send Yazid to heaven simply based on his bad deeds. He can give him a free pass to heaven. There has to be a level of accountability. And if I try my best to pray and to fast and do everything, Allah decides one day, you know what, Imranali, go to hell. It doesn't make sense. It's arbitrary, okay? Now, this relates to another philosophy called, to do with the Asha'ira. The Asha'ira were a group that believed in that. Now, you might think, why they're believing that? There is a merit to their understanding because they want to say, don't ever restrict the power of God. God can do what He wants. See, when you say God has to be just, some people say you're restricting God. God can do what He wants, right? To give you a slight point, I don't go after, I'm trying to develop the point. You remember the story of Prophet Musa and Khidr? Yes? And Prophet Musa alayhi salam, he keeps asking Khidr, why are these things happening? Why, for example, is Allah allowing a ship to capsize? Yes? Why is He killing those children? Right? And Khidr says to Musa, Isbir, be patient. And Prophet Musa doesn't have that level of patience. And he keeps asking. Yes? And this is one answer to give, that we sometimes don't know why certain things happen. And then Khidr says, look, that ship had to capsize, because if it had reached that kingdom, all of the people in that ship would have been enslaved by that terrible king. Right? But to give the answer about why children or why we believe in Adala, the other side of the coin, and you will find this in all of our classical Shia books, for example, Baab-Ul-Ilm by Allama Hilli and others, they say that we believe in Adala because every human being can discover and implement justice independently. We do not require revelation or Quran to tell us how to be just. We don't. That's why today you're talking about United Kingdom. That's why today you go to a jungle, you go anywhere. Every human being will have a basic sense of what is right and wrong. Somebody is drowning, right, on an island, the natural fitra of a person is to save that person. The person is in an island, nobody has communicated that. He will go and save, or she will go and save that person, right? Today, you have laws of human rights and human dignity in this country. Did anybody reveal to these judges and lawmakers the Quran? No, they decided themselves that this is the right thing to do, right? So all my point to you is, when the Quran is addressing mankind, it means Allah has implanted in us the ability to decide what is right and wrong and how to implement that justice. Look, today, you want to follow about Palestine. How many videos will you see of non-Muslims? Non-Muslims who do not believe in Islam, they are saying, most are saying, that what is happening in Palestine is wrong. They have not necessarily read Quran. Where is this coming from? So one point I want to tell you is, the Quran's appeal, if we read the verses like that, the Quran's appeal is to humankind. Not just because God addresses it, God is telling us that I sent to you prophets to guide, but you have it in yourself to implement justice. And that is why Al-Husayn ibn alayhi salam, when he's speaking to other people in Karbala who are not Muslims, even Hur, who decides and says, "Oh Hussein, I was the one that stopped you in your tracks," he is deciding himself that he did something wrong. You see that? So, when we are talking about Al-Husayn alayhi salam, Al-Husayn is appealing to the universal call of justice which resides in all of our hearts. Salawat. Our task, whether we have necessarily done it or not, is to universalize the call of Imam Hussein, not to keep it in the four walls of the masjid. Yes? That is the biggest task, right? And a side point, which is, you know the Who is Hussein movement? This is something very recent. Wasn't there, my elders would know, was there Who is Hussein movement in 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s? There wasn't. Yes? Imam Hussein was expressed through rituals. And that is historically recorded even in the Safavid period. Why now are we associating Imam Hussein with water and poor people? And where is all this come from? You see my point? The task for us, if we have this message, is to universalize, okay? So, Imam Hussein's mind was about making the call for justice accessible to everybody. Accessible. He did not start with Salah and Saum and Zakat and Khums. You see the discussions in Karbala, it is all about what is right and what is wrong. How beautiful and how simple is the message of Imam Islam. Palestine is this example. We are talking about something that people can feel in their hearts. So when we have lost that aspect, then we have lost the essence of Islam. Salawat. So now I can answer this question which I left you with, which is, why is it that Imam Ali alayhi salam talked about 3 types of dhulm? Why did he say that? And to remind you, Imam Ali said that you have one type of dhulm that Allah does not forgive. That was the first one. What did he mean by that? He said, فَأَمَّا الظُّلْمُ الَّذِي لَا يُغْفَرُ فَشِرْكُ بِاللَّهِ. He says the injustice that is not forgiven is the one that is to do with the shirk of Allah. When you associate with Allah, okay? So whether it's idols and even whether it is myself. If I think I'm important, if I think I'm great, that is also polytheism, by the way. Known as shirkul khafi, okay? And he quotes the verse of the Quran, Inna Allah la yaghfiru an yushraka bih. Indeed, Allah does not forgive anything that is associated with him. Okay? Then he says that there is a dhulm which is forgiven, but I didn't elaborate. And this I find very interesting because I think all of us suffer from this, all of us. So he says, وَأَمَّا الظُّلْمُ الَّذِي يُغْفَرُ فَظُلْمُ الْعَبْدِ نَفْسَهُ عِنْدَ بَعْضِ الْحَنَاتِ. Okay? He says the injustice that Allah forgives or is forgiven is the injustice that the servant does to himself in some trifling matters. Hanat means like trifling and small issues. So I'll just give us some examples, okay? Myself. Yes, I've done this, so I'm being honest. If I've broken things in my life in anger, and you see, none of you are willing to admit, I'm admitting, okay? I hope you haven't broken any hearts. Hearts, you ask my wife that now, okay? So, but one heart, no, I've not broken hearts of females. One female, alhamdulillah, okay? But breaking things when you're younger, 15, 16, or whatever, Allah actually forgives these things, interestingly. He forgives it. Now, it may harm ourselves, it does, because you develop anger, you develop these things, right? Teenagers, you get angry, it's hormones happening, right? Even later on, but Allah actually forgives these things, interestingly. And we're not often sometimes told these things. So it can harm our spiritual development, but Allah forgives it. The other interpretation of this sentence is those small things where it can affect other people but does not come to the level of dhulm. So again, you ask my daughter and son, I've given this example before, they take the pen from my room and I need it for majlis and whatever. I said, so where is the pen? Keep it back in that same spot, And sometimes you get a bit irritable, they take the pen. Now, as long as it is not affecting my daughter, inshallah, it's not. But after the 7th, 8th time, if I'm a bit irritable, so I'm giving a very common example when we get irritable, right? These things also Allah can forgive, right? Very, very interesting. And that's why, just to tell you, when you look at Quran and you look at prophets, and you see, for example, Prophet Musa, he accidentally killed someone, yes, in an altercation, right, as reported in the Quran. Prophet Adam alayhi salam going to the forbidden tree of forbidden fruit when he was not supposed to, but he followed his desire. Prophet Yunus alayhi salam being swallowed by the whale, because why? He actually got angry, by the way, and that is the language of Quran and that is the language of Hadith. In fact, Mufassirun say there was ghayth. Ghayth means rage in his heart, because he had enough with the community and he left without God's permission. Now, these things, it requires another discussion, but I'm giving you that reference point that there are certain things where after trying and a human being fails, or there can be some desire that we follow, Allah has the capacity to forgive. Okay? So this is very beautiful because it actually shows the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you can say it does harm our development. Alright? Now we come to the third thing. Whenever I read this, it gives me shudders. Because Imam Ali then says, وَأَمَّا ظُلْمُ الَّذِي لَا يُتْرَكُ فَظُلْمُ الْعِبَادِ بَعْدِهِمْ بَعْدًا. بَعْدِهِمْ بَعْدًا. It's a very common Arabic expression. بَعْد مَا بَعْد. Okay? Imam Ali says, as for the dhulm that Allah does not leave unquestioned, He will question it without doubt. That is the dhulm that servants do to each other. And this makes us think in our life what we have done. So, if I have insulted you, or you have insulted me, I promised I would respond to you and I didn't respond, right? And you got hurt by it, or you're relying on it. I violated a contract. I took someone's money. I got angry at someone, whatever, and there was a hurt and a dhulm created, and I oppressed and harmed someone. Allah will follow that dhulm to the T on the Day of Judgment. That will be there, right? That is why when somebody passes away, the son or daughter or family member asks the community, if my father or mother or marhum has done something, please forgive. This is where it comes from, right? Now, it's fine for the son and daughter and marhum to do that, but you don't know what is in people's hearts. And it is better in our own life that we go and ask for forgiveness or rectify the affair that went wrong and resulted in dhulm. Okay? That is why now when you read a hadith by Imam Ali, that Imam Ali said that, when he was walking, he would not step on an ant or he would not take away food from an ant. Imam Ali was very cognizant of any injustice resulting from his actions. The same with Rasulullah, the same with Al-Hasan and Al-Husayn alayhi salam. Okay? So, the second point I want to make is the psychology of Al-Husayn alayhi salam when he's thinking about justice is very meticulous and very accurate. Now put all of the incidents in Karbala in context that we do in the Maqtal. Now think about it. Why is he giving choice on the night of Ashura to tell people that if you want to leave, you can leave? Why do you think? He cannot force anyone to be there. He doesn't want to be the cause of harm and say you are forced to be with me. Number two, when Hur comes to him, why does he forgive him? Because he cannot be the source of injustice. You see that? Why does he shield the children of Karbala from coming to the front in the camp? Those of you that have done ziyarah, yes, I don't know if they still do this, but do they tell you how the camp was structured? Do you remember or not? So for example, this is obviously according to archaeology and history and maybe whatever we can find, but when I went for ziyarah, the camp of Karbala is described as such that right at the back of the camp were the children. The children were shielded from fighting, by the way, and they were shielded from bloodshed. They were not meant to come to the front at all. At all. In the middle of the camp was Zayn salamullahi alayha and Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam. So Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam was being nursed by Lady Zainab. This was in the middle. And Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam, he was there in the middle but also going to the front, and sometimes would go at the back, but he was that flag bearer. And at the front was Al-Husayn alayhi salam and Abbas alayhi salam and those warriors. So my point here is that, do you know when we when we narrate the Maqtal and we say, for example, when it comes to Qasim, when it comes to Ali al-Akbar, and they say, oh uncle, can I go and fight? Yes, all of you remember? Oh uncle, can I go and fight? And there is permission, or there is whatever we have in historicals, there is a conversation happening. That is happening because Imam Hussein doesn't have the intention of harming and oppressing them. It's very beautiful in his mind. He doesn't want to entertain any bloodshed of them, but he doesn't want to harm or oppress them in any way, even if he is the Imam. Because he could say, you're obligated to fight. He could say that, by the way, as the Imam. And we would be narrating Karbala quite differently. And probably we wouldn't have an issue with it if we didn't go into the sources. But I'm going to the sources, informing you that Al-Husayn was very cognizant that if he did not give people a choice, then it would be regarded as majburi, as ijbar. You see that? So Al-Husayn, it's not just his stand against physical stand that is beautiful. His soul is beautiful. He has a beautifully just and merciful soul in the way he's thinking and making specific decisions in the camp. Salawat, please. And just to give you, again, and I want to go into Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, just to give you, again, parts of his mind, parts of his statements. In the Maqtal of Khwarizmi, volume 1, page 184, Al-Husayn addresses Walid ibn Utbah. Walid ibn Utbah is the governor of Medina. So this is very early on in his journey. When he addresses the governor of Medina, he is explaining why he is making a stand against Yazid ibn Muawiyah. And remember, Walid ibn Utbah, the governor of Medina, and others were pressurizing Imam Hussein to give bay'ah, right? Now we always say this, you know this, that he was pressurized. Maybe we don't go into the response. What response did he give? Did he just say, I'm just standing against Yazid? No. What was his response, according to sources? His response was this. He said, "Oh governor, We are the Ahlul Bayt of the prophethood and the source of the divine mission. Our house is the frequenting place of angels, of malaika. Malaika descend in our house, okay? And our house is the site of grace. Then he said, Allah started Islam with our family and will continue it to end with us. Now, I'll do this bit in Arabic. He says, this is how he describes Yazid, right? He says, Yazid rajulun sharibul khamar وَقَاتِلُ النَّفْسِ الْمُحْتَرَمَّ مُعْلِنٌ بِالْفِسْقِ. He said Yazid was a man who drank wine, or drinker of wine. Sharibul khamar, he drank wine profusely. And he killed human beings, innocent people specifically. And this is interesting, مُعْلِنٌ بِالْفِسْقِ. Mu'lin is somebody that does something openly, doesn't care. He openly committed lewd and immoral and indecent acts. He just didn't care. That's why Ibn Kathir, the famous Sunni historian, he said Yazid was a fasiq, a dhalim, and somebody that was intoxicated every day and made monkeys and dogs fight with each other. That's how he's described, right? So Imam Hussein is describing someone that was corrupting the morals of society, the morals. I made a reference to social media yesterday, being careful what is there, and images and all these things can affect us. You don't have Netflix in those days, right? You don't have that. But look at Imam Hussein's future thinking of justice, right? Here's Yazid, he's openly committing lewd acts, openly. Now, it's not that everyday people are seeing Yazid, but there is an effect of a Khalif openly doing things that people will follow. Now, if at that time, Imam Hussein is thinking, right, if Yazid remains in power, I can see that society will descend into corruption in the next 5, 10, 15 years. This is wrong. Nobody is saying anything. And people want standing up to Yazid. Today, we're bombarded by every advert we can think of on YouTube and media. How strong, I don't want to say Muslim media, I don't want to put religion on it. How strong is moral media? How strong is our media organizations? Do we have any? Not really. How strong is media lobbying? We don't invest in these things. Myself, working in university or giving interviews and going into these channels, I can tell you directly that during the Palestine crisis I gave several interviews. These interviews not really broadcast a great deal, and there was no strong voice that we could carry to respond to the onslaught that was there in the Western media against Muslims or Palestinians. So again, it's about investing our resources in those movements that are going to tackle those things that are creating a kind of immorality today. This was Imam Hussein's thinking back then, over 14 centuries ago. Now he says, وَمِثْلِي لَا يُبَايِعُ مِثْلَهُ. He says, how can a person like me give bay'ah to somebody like him? It's a very famous statement, okay? And then he says that I must consider my future, you must consider your future. And we must see who is appropriate for the Khilafah and the leadership of the Muslim community. So now look at Imam Hussein's mind. The third point, Imam Hussein's leadership and thinking about Islam is in the future. He is a long-term thinker. So imagine if Imam Hussein al-Islam is alive today. How would he build a masjid? How would he lead? How would he create policies? My interpretation is, I think he would invest more and more in the media, in the politics of the situation, rather than perhaps, and me not being against majalis, I'm for majalis, but I think he would balance the amount of internal programs we have in our centers, and I think he would think about how Muslims can be in the society as participants and active contributors. This is my reading of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. If in that time he's thinking ahead, imagine the Imam today. Salawat. I want to ask a brief question to the youngsters, okay? Guys, yes? Are you listening? Yes. Okay, the way that I've described Imam Hussein, yes, do you think that he's a bit more realistic to you? Or not? Be honest, be honest. Like, do you think of him now that, oh yes, Imam Hussein, leader, he's thinking, he's making decisions like you and I can make it. Do you think that's a fair point or not? Yes? Okay, now I'm asking that genuinely because then I know how to develop the lecture, okay? And do you feel sometimes that when you think of Imams, maybe you're trying to find out more, or they're distant from you, or maybe you can't relate to them? Is that fair or not? Or no? Yes? Okay, inshallah. Salawat. Okay. And the sisters, the same question. I'm asking directly so you think about why you have come to the majlis and why, okay, we are gathered here for this Imam, that lady. Just think about them practically, inshallah, okay? Now, Imam Hussein's concept of justice was principled, was accurate, and was in the future. So now the second question to ask is, how did his son, Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, carry that message? It is in some respects a difficult question to answer, because Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam was ill, after that imprisoned, and after that monitored by the Umayyad government. That's a historical fact. So then you ask, what then is the function of an Imam? Right? I mean, what value is there of an Imam, practically? And intellectually, what can we gain from him? Now, this requires another lecture, but I will answer it in one way. I had developed some notes on As-Sahifa Sajjadiyah, but we don't have enough time. Maybe inshallah another lecture we'll do it. Because it is the wilad of Imam Zayn al-Abidin, I'll just mention a bit about As-Sahifa, but then focus on Risalatul Hukuk, at least for the last 10-15 minutes, okay? As-Sahifa Sajjadiyah. One thing to note about it, and I'm giving a practical thing that we all can use, right? I am sure that you've all opened the book, The Psalms of Islam. Yes? You can see it in your apps as well, translated by William Chittick. You may have As-Sahifa in Arabic. The argument, sorry, let me start again. You know that As-Sahifa contains ad'iyah supplications, yes? Okay? 30, 40, ad'iyah, 50, depending on the version. I'll come back to that. And there are munajat there, yes? Right. If you want to answer the question, what was the legacy of Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam, people often give an answer, oh, look at As-Sahifa Sajjadiyah, right? Okay? They often point to, look, after Quran, Nahju Balagha and As-Sahifa Sajjadiyah. You've all heard this. So they will say, look at the du'as of As-Sahifa Sajjadiyah, look at this beautiful legacy that the Imam has left. Right. Would you accept this as a common answer, everybody? Okay. As you've noted, I'm not satisfied with these common answers. So then this is me at age 15 and 20. So I started to think, why do people say this? It doesn't make sense to me. Then I started to read, okay? So, okay, people say this. Now, a couple of questions I want to ask you. How did As-Sahifa Sajjadiyah start? Where did these du'as come from? Right, number one. How were they expressed? How did they reach us today? Right? So, I want to, inshallah, another time devote a full lecture. I want to give you an insight. One argument by Hussein Mudarrisi, you may have heard him. Hussein Mudarrisi is a scholar, she is a scholar in Princeton University. And I would recommend you to buy his books. He has done wonderful works, unique works. One work he has done is he has compiled the, if you like, the muhaddithin, or the narrators of the Shia and their works in a book. Another one more recent, he has looked at the hadith and the fiqh of Imam Jafar Sadiq. These are in English, by the way. And so in his earlier book, when he's looking at the works of the Imams and the Ashab, he said very interesting, he said, this As-Sahifa Sajjadiyah was known as Dua As-Sahifa. Dua As-Sahifa, okay? He said, As-Sayfa Sajadiyah did not start with 20, 30, 40 du'as. It started with one du'a, which he says was known as Du'a as-Sahifa. Du'a as-Sahifa means the supplication of Sahifa. Sahifa means a page or a folio or note. So at the time of Imam Zayn al-Abidin, and we will appreciate him even more, Zayn al-Abidin couldn't go on the pulpit like Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, like Al-Hasan alayhi salam, or after him Jafar Sadiq alayhi. He could not go on the pulpit and recite a majlis. Our poor Imam, this is what makes him courageous, had to express thoughts, thinking about Islam, morals, philosophy, in the form of a dua. And he could not do that regularly. Like today, we are gathered here, we can recite this dua, that dua. It wasn't like that at that time. So he expressed one dua, I forget which number it was. I will try to find out next time for you, inshallah. He recited one dua, which was then written down on an old folio, on an old page. Right? You know, like a parchment page, those leather style pages, it was written down like that. That was known as Dua as-Saifa. That was the beginning of as-Saifa Sajadiyah, by the way. Okay? According to his argument, it's a very beautiful argument, right? Now, that's to appreciate the restriction the Imam was under. But number two, it also shows another thing, which is if you open as-Saifa Sajadiyah and you read any dua, just read, I'm giving you a sample of 10 duas, but even if you read one dua, okay? We have talked about justice, a bit about suffering. You read dua number 22, which is a dua specifically for hardship, difficulty and intensity. If you look at the dua, it's probably one of the most mystical and one of the most personal and philosophical du'as that you will find in the whole of the Islamic tradition. He talks about man's journey in accepting suffering, trusting Allah, not trusting human beings, not trusting his or her doubts, and finding a kind of contentment in Allah. What does this remind you of? And please, doctors, psychologists, you can tell me. What does this remind you of? I'm sure you know this. The Kubler-Ross grief cycle, or the Kubler grief cycle, yes? You know the 5 stages of grief? Yes? That when you yes, yes, Rasulullah said, so denial, I don't remember the 5 stages, denial, anger,
there's acceptance at the end.
There's acceptance at the end, exactly. Anxiety, yes, maybe one of them is anxiety. MashaAllah, well done, thank you. Maybe there's anxiety, okay? So, just look at that, right? This, I think it's Kubler-Ross. Maybe one of you can look at it on the phone, so I correct myself. But this Kubler-Ross grief cycle, I don't say you will find it in the dua. I don't like to say you'll find everything in Quran, because you can't say mobile phones are in the Quran and AI. And you can't strictly, you can say the principles of humanity there, but I don't know if you can point to the specific things. But what I feel we didn't do as Muslims, and this I 100% believe in, we did not look at the intellectual and moral legacy of Zayn al-Abidin al-Islam for our contemporary circumstances. We didn't. Now if you look, there are people who are doing PhDs on these things now, today, in 21st century. But when these du'as were revealed, and even in the last century, nobody thought about this du'a as, did you?
Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance.
So denial, anger, bargaining, depression and acceptance. You will find these concepts in the dua. You will find it. Just read it. You will find it there. And we did not create a framework of psychology and how to get over suffering in these areas. Can you imagine how our communities, how our elders, how our families would be uplifted? How we can minimize psychological problems? We give this answer, you know, when people become ill, recite this dua paro, inshallah, you know, this response, people say this, and I'm thinking, what do you mean by reciting the dua? What do you mean by, what's meant to happen to you? These things we don't answer the second question. Who is to say somebody understands Arabic? Who is to say somebody even understands the English? You need to create these practicalities from these du'as to appreciate how Zayn al-Abidin al-Islam was educating himself and the society. Not from the pulpit, but from the du'as. It's wonderful, this legacy. Salawat. Okay, so I think 5 minutes, 10 minutes? 5 minutes, okay. So I will give one brief answer only, a practical answer from Risalat al-Hukuk. This will be my conclusion. It's a very practical thing, okay? Which is, how do we ourselves become just, right? How do we avoid harming others? How do we avoid oppressing others, oppressing myself? Imam Zayn al-Abidin al-Islam does have an answer for that. And I am doing some research on this. I want to try to make this, inshallah, a practical framework for schools, madaris and communities. I want to trial it out and test it. Just give you a reference point before I recite this. You know that MBTI model? Again, somebody can remind me. You know when you decide what kind of personality you are, and then you have greater reflection on yourself. Are you, somebody can remind, but you then fit into, like, are you reflective? Are you introvert, extrovert? You know, all that sort of thing, right? This is very similar to this. I want to try to develop a model like this, but from these words. So this is Imam Zayn al-Abidin's answer as to how the souls of human beings can be more reflective in being just and respecting the rights of themselves and others. He has said, وَأَمَّا حَقُّ نَفْسِكَ عَلَيْكَ فَأَنْ تَسْتَوْفِيهَا فِي طَاعَةِ اللَّهِ. He says, the right of your soul against you is that you should employ your soul in obeying Allah. Our souls are there to obey Allah. Now, you will ask, how do we obey Allah? Is it salat? Is it sawm? He doesn't go into that yet, by the way. That comes later on. That's later on. He then says in Risal al-Hukuk, فَتُؤَدِّي إِلَى لِسَانِكَ حَقَّهُ وَإِلَى سَمْعِكَ حَقَّهُ. He says, how do we obey Allah? That we deliver our tongue its right, and our hearing its right, وَإِلَى بَصْرِكَ حَقَّ, and our sight or eyes its right against us, and وَإِلَى يَدِكَ حَقَّهَا, and our hand its right over us, or our duty to our hand, our duty to our eyes and ears, وَإِلَى رِجْلِكَ حَقَّهَا, and we respect the right of our legs, okay? وَإِلَى بَطْنِكَ حَقَّ, so we respect our stomachs, right, when we eat, okay? وَإِلَى فَرْجِكَ حَقَّ, and we respect the right of our private part, and we seek help from Allah in all of that. Now, you can interpret haqq in two ways. You can say right or duty. Maybe to make it easier, what Imam Zayn al-Abidin is saying, that we owe a duty to our tongue, our ears, our eyes, our stomach, our leg, and our private parts. We owe a duty to them. We owe a duty to our biological organs, that we don't use these organs, or my tongue or my ears, to hear, see, speak anything, eat anything that is unlawful, and that I don't use these organs or limbs to do anything that will oppress you or harm you. This was his philosophy. We do have reports that this hadith came from Rasulullah as well, by the way, peace be upon him. Okay? What it tells us, and I'll conclude here, Zayn al-Abidin al-Islam was not this sort of imam that was always sad and didn't have confidence, as sometimes he's portrayed. Sometimes. I mean, sometimes people have that thinking. I'm not saying that we have that intention, but sometimes we can have that oppression, the impression that he was restricted like that. Okay? But the reality is that he used whatever means he had to practically educate others and himself, spiritually, intellectually, and for the benefit of society. Our task is to make sure that we look at these words not just ritualistically as to read, but as how they would benefit us. To me, I'm humbly speaking, this is the way I look at the Imams and how they can reach our youngsters in all generations, inshallah. Salawat. Please can we end this majlis by praying for all of the mu'mineen marhumin, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives all of our sins, and that He gives us strength to fight oppression, and that Allah gives us the strength to be better human beings, especially after attending these majalises, inshallah. Surah Al-Fatiha.
Didn't get a chance to get that, but never mind.
It's a bit late now, that's it.
Yeah, no. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is something that is traditionally done in the Khoja community, I'm told. I've never read it before. Last year I was here, I wasn't read before. Was it? Oh, I've got to try my best then, haven't I? Okay. Ilahi, Ilahi, سجاد کے سجدوں کا واسطہ یا رب بیمار کرب بلا کا ہو واسطہ جو ہو مریض ان کو تو دے جلد اب شفا یا رب بیمار کرب بلا کا ہو واسطہ جو ہو مریض ان کو تو دے جلد اب شفا بیمار وطن فاطمہ صغرا کا واسطہ معصوم کا یتیم سکینہ کا واسطہ ڈوبا لب دریا ہو سفینہ کا واسطہ اے میرے خدا شاہ مدینہ کا واسطہ یا رب بیمار کرب بلا کا ہو واسطہ جو ہو مریض ان کو تو دے جلد اب شفا یا رب بیمار کرب بلا کا ہو واسطہ جو ہو مریض ان کو تو دے جلد اب شفا بیمار کی حالت ہے یہ دیکھی نہیں جاتی میں کیا کروں غم سے میری بھر جاتی ہے چھاتی بس یاد میں تیرے میں مصلی ہوں بچھاتا جز تیرا نہیں کوئی میرا مونس و ساتھی یا رب بیمار کرب بلا کا ہو واسطہ جو ہو مریض ان کو تو دے جلد اب شفا یا رب بیمار کرب بلا کا ہو واسطہ جو ہو مریض ان کو تو دے جلد اب شفا کرتا ہوں دعا رب سے یا حضرت سجاد है आसरा तुम्हारा, तुम ही कीजियो इमदाद। है कौन मेरा जिससे करूं जाके मैं फरियाद, इमदाद तलब है मेरी, तुम कीजियो इमदाद। या रब बीमार करबो बला का हो वासिता, जो हो मरीज उनको तू दे जल्द अब शिफा। या रब बीमार करबो बला का हो वासिता, जो हो मरीज उनको तू दे जल्द अब शिफा। बीमारों के लिए तेरा ये जिक्र शिफा है, हर इस्म तेरा उनके लिए एक दवा है। बीमारों के लिए तेरा ये जिक्र शिफा है, हर इस्म तेरा उनके लिए एक दवा है। तू कुन फयकून है सो तेरे दर की अता है, तू चाहे तो एक पल में ही उन सब की शिफा है। या रब बीमार करबो बला का हो वासिता, जो हो मरीज उनको तू दे जल्द अब शिफा। या रब बीमार करबो बला का हो वासिता, जो हो मरीज उनको तू दे जल्द अब शिफा। जो हो मरीज उनको तू दे जल्द अब शिफा, जो हो मरीज उनको तू दे जल्द अब शिफा। अस्सलाम वालेकुम इंशाअल्लाह। Short one. I've got Sajjad's one, short.
Yeah, do that, but then we'll finish up with the normal one.
No, yeah, okay. نتوجه إلى زيارة إمام السجاد زين العابدين عليه السلام إن شاء الله. السلام عليك يا زين العابدين، السلام عليك يا زين المتهجدين، السلام عليك يا إمام المتقين، السلام عليك يا درة الصالحين، السلام عليك يا ولي المسلمين، السلام عليك يا قرة عين الناظرين العارفين، السلام عليك يا خلف السابقين، السلام عليك يا وصي الوصيين، السلام عليك يا خازن وصايا المرسلين، السلام عليك يا ضوء المستوحشين، السلام عليك يا نور المجتهدين، السلام عليك يا سراج المرتاضين، السلام عليك يا ذخر المتعبدين، السلام عليك يا مصباح العالمين، السلام عليك يا سفينة العلم، السلام عليك يا سكينة الحلم، السلام عليك يا ميزان القصاص، السلام عليك يا سفينة الخلاص، السلام عليك يا بحر الندى، السلام عليك بدر الدجى، السلام عليك أيها الأواه الحليم، السلام عليك أيها الصابر الحكيم، السلام عليك يا رئيس البكائين، السلام عليك يا مصباح المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا مولاي يا أبا محمد، أشهد أنك حجة الله وابن حجته وأبو بحجته وابن أمينه وأبو أمنائه، وأنك ناصحت في عبادة ربك وسارعت في مرضاته وخيبت أعداءه وسررت أولياءه. أشهد أنك قد عبدت الله حق عبادته واتقيته حق تقاته وأطعته حق طاعته حتى أتاك اليقين. فعليك يا مولاي يا ابن رسول الله أفضل التحية والسلام عليك ورحمة الله وبركاته والفرج. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وانجل فرجه. Richard's your birthday. I'm going to sing that.